guys, I'm Sean Campbell from Adjusted Chiropractic. Today I'm talking about the FMS, so it's something that we're running down in the clinic now, running down at One Health and Fitness in South Moraine. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the FMS is and why we're using it. Alright, so basically what is it? It's a ranking grading system for movement. So what we're looking at is the foundational movements that people develop as they go through their developmental stages as a child. And then as we get older through life, we pick up these bad habits and we start to lose the normal movements that we really should sustain through our whole lifetime. So by screening these patterns and looking at these movements, we can start to identify areas that have limitations or weaknesses and asymmetries, so differences side to side. And then at the end we get a score. So this score both looks at each of the individual movements and then also looks at a total score at the end. Alright, so where this is being implemented at the moment, the FMS, this one, the Functional Movement System, this screen comes from a guy named Gray Cook over in the States, very well known physical therapist, strength and conditioning coach with a lot of NFL teams. I think it's been about 15 years been working with different NFL teams over there. Currently, it's believed about 7 or 8 of the teams are using this to screen their players pre-season and then during the season, basically giving them the baseline and seeing where they can improve and trying to reduce injuries and that sort of thing. Alright, so you can see here, this is actually the head trainer of the Seattle Seahawks. This was taken about 3 or 4 years ago, this picture. So it just shows them going through some of the stuff pre-season. The other guys that are using this and finding great success is personal trainers in different gyms like CrossFit gyms. Anyone who's got people coming in and starting to do exercise. Basically we're creating a baseline for their movement, working out where they actually have weaknesses and any areas that we want to target that we need to improve before we start loading up movements. Alright, so this is the 7 movements in the screen. We also have 3 clearing tests, so these are pain tests. This is not designed for people who are in pain. It's designed for healthy, pain-free individuals. Basically, overhead squat, hurdle step, inline lunge, shoulder mobility, the straight leg raise, active push-up, this is for the core, and rotary stability, looking at core rotation. So with these 7 movements, we actually get, you can see from there, we cover all the foundational movements that people should have. We're looking at standing across a frontal plane, in an inline plane, also on one foot. We've got upper body and lower body. We've got one laying on the back, one facing down, looking at core stability and rotation through the core. So covering basically all the foundational movements that a person should be able to have and maintain through their life. Alright, this is a nice little pyramid just showing that to have skill and controlled movement, we need a base of mobility, then stability. So the reason we say that you need mobility first is that we need the correct input for the correct output. So a perfect example of this is if your core is not moving properly, if we're not getting the correct feedback from the body, from the core, from all the muscles, ligaments, how the joints are moving, sending feedback up into the brain through the nervous system, then the body's not able to perform a correct output and control that movement. So then you go try to perform a skill and you're not getting the correct feedback from the body. That's when we start to see injuries, see poor control. So that's how we can see the controlled movement is what is built on the mobility and the stability, and then that's where we can start from that controlled movement heading into some real skill. Alright, so why do we use this screen? Basically it's a simple method of looking at asymmetries, looking at limitations, and it's just much easier than using extensive testing, using lab equipment, things like that. Another way, so it creates a baseline of movement. So it gives us a starting point that can then be looked at for improvements further down through the seasons, aftercare, that sort of thing. And then one of the other key areas that it picks up red flags. So any movements patterns that are dangerous, that are going to cause injury, we're able to pick them up nice and early. Then we're able to bring a relevant intervention to then reduce those poor movement patterns and start to improve their risk of injury through the season. Alright, also it can be applied at any fitness level, pretty much any age. And finally, the FMS identifies if you are in a high or low risk for injury. So there's a total score. We find that if you fall below 14 on that score, then you tend to be in a high risk of injury. Anything above 14, your injury risk tends to be lower. Alright, so a bit on the research that's been done on this sort of stuff. When it first came out, a few people like to say, oh, we don't know if it works and is it any good? So a bit of research has been done over the last 15 years. The first one is it reliable? So can you get consistent results between people actually assessing? So what they've shown is that it's easy to screen and it's consistent. So if I screen someone, they score a certain score, I get someone else to come and screen the same movements, they're going to get the same score. It's very simple, very easy to use. The validity, so is it doing what it says it's doing? So what we find is that it identifies people who are in a high risk category for injury or a low risk category for injury. The way they got through this was by using the NFL teams, looking at how they performed through the season, looking at their baseline before season, and then seeing whether they were getting injured through the season. And they found that the guys who had the low scores at pre-season were the ones more likely to get injured during the season and had the highest days off due to injury. Alright, so next, is it modifiable? So there's no point having a screen if we can't actually change what's happening, what score you get on the screen. So with a relevant intervention, they've shown that you can improve outcomes and therefore reduce likelihood of injury. And then, is it valid in regards to performance? So then they did some research on how the individual movements correlate with actual performance. And for example, they found the overhead squat correlates with power in being able to jump higher. So basically the power coming from the hips. Alright, so this is just a little bit on stats for a few of those studies. Basically 5.9 times more likely to be injured in the NFL if you're below that 14-point cutoff. Marines 3.9 times more likely to be injured, and firefighters 2.2 times more likely to be injured during drills if their score on the FMS fell below 14. Alright, so another nice little pyramid. Basically, the FMS is looking at functional movement. Functional movement is the starting point that we want to build our skills and therefore increase performance from. If you take a poor functional movement and you start adding load and trying to build skill on top of that, then you're going to get injured, possibly. The likelihood is higher, but you're also going to hit roadblocks in how well you can excel and exceed and improve your performance, because if you don't have the foundational movements down, then when you start adding load to these poor movements, it's like hitting a save button for those movements. It's much harder to try and rebuild those functional movements once you've started training and adding loads and skill-based training on top of those poor movements. Alright, and then just who we are. So I'm Sean from Adjusted Chiropractic. I'm also working with the Osteologic team down at One Health and Fitness in South Moraine.